Hi friends and followers. Today I am going to drop a little new tidbit out. Something that I have decided to do. If you have read the title, of course, you know that it is I'm going to start anger management. Now, if you have watched any of my YouTube videos, you have found out that I had a rather troubled childhood and adolescenthood and young adulthood. So a lot of these things have affected me naturally in adverse ways, which is one reason why I love psychology. And this YouTube channel is an outlet for me to share a lot of my ongoing issues, but it's not just about me, because we all have, huge significant events in our past life that have caused us to essentially have psychological things that we have to deal with. And I'm a huge proponent of therapy, and especially talk therapy. But nothing can replace you doing what the old timers called soul searching, praying, seeking the face of God, and asking yourself, where did I go wrong? Because it's so easy to point the finger. But unless you are asking that all-important question, where did I go wrong? I remember there was an old song that used to be sung in the churches, and it's me, O Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not my father nor my mother, but me, O Lord, standing in the need of prayer. So we need to remember the adage, if you're pointing the finger, let me see if I can get my hand here. If you're pointing the finger at someone else, there's 3 more fingers pointing back at you. So it would do the world a great amount of good if we'd all do some soul searching. So looking back, I never saw myself as an angry person. What other people saw and what I displayed as anger felt like pain. It felt like depression. It felt like remorse. It felt like heartache. It felt like grief. But often it displayed in anger. And so many times we blind ourselves to how we are affecting other people. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about anger, and toward the end especially I'm going to give you a little bit of advice on anger management. I haven't started my anger management yet. I'm going to. I've notified my therapist that I want to start dealing with some of the things that's caused me to lash out. But I didn't know that I was angry. I didn't feel angry, but the way that I displayed felt like anger to other people. So, and I'm sure, and I'm sorry for it, but I'm sure that I have hurt other people and bothered them a lot. And there's been a lot of estrangement because I couldn't, for the longest time, I don't know why that we are so blinded, but I couldn't see why I was being cut off and blocked and ghosted and all of that stuff. It was really hard for me to see that. I am an anxious attachment. I'm going to be talking more about that, but it comes from abandonment issues. As a child, my parents worked really hard, and I have told the story about how I was essentially, at home alone a lot. I wasn't really alone in the house because my mother's beauty shop was in the house, but I was alone a lot. And I could go down through the different periods of my life where I felt abandoned. It started at age 1, and I wouldn't probably remember that, but because my mother told me and other people told me instances and situations, I know that my, quote, abandonment or neglect feelings started at age 1. I had another huge hit at age 4. And I'm not going to go into all of this because, of course, protecting those I love. Because nobody meant this to happen. Nobody planned to make me feel abandoned. No, they, especially at that young age, they thought I was the apple of their eye, And then, but as time went on, I had another hit at age 10. And gradually things started falling apart because at that point in time, the reality of life started hitting me. And I was always very acute to everything. I was hyper vigilant to everything that was going on around me. And children do become that way, hyper vigilant to everything going on around them because of their insecurities. So then again, at age 14, which led me into 20 years of essentially feeling abandoned. And then, on through my life, I can just keep going, picking out the different times in my life. Now, I'm not having one big, huge pity party. I've been a big girl, and I could take it. But part of that was the problem. Because, number one, like I said, I'm 64 years old, and back in that day and time, you had to toughen up or you just didn't make it. It was kind of survival of the fittest. And through a lot of my life, I was not treated with a gentle hand. My young life at home, yes, I was treated pretty gently. But a lot of my life, it was I'm a woman, but it was like man up. So I did. I had to become tough. But along about the age of, 16, probably 16, 17, I could feel anger building. And I never was suicidal, but I had suicidal thoughts. Because honestly, I just didn't want to be where I was at. I just didn't want to live the way I was living. I wasn't happy. And nobody cared if I was happy. Everybody just imagined I was happy. But this just, different sections of my life, the feeling was nobody cares about you. You are apparently defective. You are apparently not worth their time. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't specific people in my life, especially my siblings, who didn't reach out and, really, really try to help me. But, they didn't really understand what was going on in my home life. They didn't really understand what was going on in my life. I mean, nobody really understood anything back then. I mean, psychology was just not something that was taught, especially not appreciated. Because, you were either smart or you weren't. You were either defective or you weren't. And it was just really black and white thinking. Often, during these times of feeling abandoned, I simply just didn't think anybody cared. And I often was reminded, and I won't name the person, but I would be reminded that your family really doesn't care anything about you. and I felt trapped. And I would often think of people, and I would say, why don't they rescue me? And I mean, a lot of this time, I was still a child. And I was thinking, why couldn't I be this couple's child? And they could raise me along with their children. Or why couldn't I be accepted? Why couldn't I be adopted by this person and be one of their children? And of course, my parents weren't aware of what was going on. They didn't do this on purpose. They weren't neglectful or bad people. They were good people. But oftentimes we don't know what's going on in our children's mind, or how sensitive they are, or how they're being affected. When we feel abandoned, it is a very sad, insecure feeling. And oftentimes, especially as children, we don't know how to process that. This was something that I dealt with very early on. As I was out scouting out prospective people to nurture me, validate me, make me feel as if I was important, especially when I got to be a little bit older child. No one that had time. I can remember visiting many people's houses, because I'm assuming that I was being babysitted. I don't really remember what the instances were or why, but I would be going to different people's houses. Some of them were my mom's customers, some were like friends, or sometimes it was maybe someone that I had met at school or whatever. But a lot of times it was just an acquaintance of my family or my mother. I never knew why I was there. I didn't understand why I was there. So I didn't understand I was being babysitted. So anyway, through these times in my life, which I really didn't even understand, and as I grew older, I started taking on a victim mentality. I was so overwhelmed with depression. And as I took on a victim mentality, often it was seen also as abuse. And I have suffered almost every kind of abuse that you can think about during different periods of my life. No, most people don't know about it because I haven't told anyone, or I've told very few people. And but yes, there was definitely abuse involved. Having a victim mentality or feeling abused will start to build anger. It's, why am I not protected? Why is nobody coming to my rescue? Why are these people treating me this way? Why doesn't anyone care? And these thoughts will roll over and over in your head, and you become defensive. And there were times I had thoughts of taking my life, or had thoughts of running away, but nobody paid any attention. No one paid attention. And like I said, there were certain times in my life, especially as I got a little bit older, that people in my family tried to intervene, but it was nearly impossible because there was a certain amount of Stockholm syndrome going on, and a lot of pressure to be submissive, to be quiet, to be secretive. As I said, I didn't realize I was angry. I mean, you would think it would be plain as the nose on your face, but I did not realize I was angry. But if you have or are going through things like this, and you're not realizing that your temper fits or your reactions are anger filled, listen to what people are saying. If you hear people say, why are you so upset all the time? Why are you angry all the time? Or if someone expresses to you that you hurt their feelings or you're harsh, then stop and think, am I expressing as anger? You have to self-analyze. Also, people might say to you, how come you're grouchy all the time? And honestly, these things describe to me a lot. And especially when I was going through the whole sepsis brain swelling thing, my anger just doubled and tripled, which I had went through some really strong experiences that gave me huge abandonment issues at that time, but I couldn't process it because like I said, my brain was swelling and I was really just having mental issues I couldn't process. When I really started putting together my anger with my abandonment issues, was when I met Jamie. Now, Jamie had anger issues as well, but mine could top his. And we were constantly, because we were homeless, we were kind of trauma bonded in the beginning, and we could really have some heated arguments. And then I started putting my feelings together, and I started realizing, and he was always very good, because when I was going through the brain swelling episode, I could get pretty self-destructive. So I could like go into like a panic attack and be pulling my hair, or just I was beside myself. So he would gently grab my arms and keep me from pulling my hair and talk to me and talk me down. So but at one point, after a little while, I started realizing that there was a real connection between my heartache and my anger. And I told him, I said, when I get angry and you see I'm starting to get a little out of control, just hug me. Just hug me. And he started doing that. Of course, I'm 5'6.5" and Jamie is 6'3", and he's a towering man. But he would just grab me like a bear and just hold me. And instantly, that anger would turn into tears, and the tears would flow. And it was almost instantaneous, because what I needed was to be loved. I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. I needed love. I needed validation. And I'm crying. I'm sorry. So, but when he started hugging me and giving me that validation, not only he realized that broke the anger cycle, but it made me realize that there was a huge connection with the pain that I had suffered and my anger. So there are two main triggers for me that make me angry, and everybody's going to have different anger triggers. One is the abandonment. If I feel like that somebody I trust and I love is turning their back on me, even if I have been incorrigible, even if I have been angry, and it, so many times I didn't even know that I was displaying that way. But if I feel like somebody is turning away from me, then I panic. I get, all wrought up, and it will display as anger, because I'm not going to cry. I'm terrified of not being loved. And rather than be weak, because I have been trained to be strong, I fight it. And so it displays as anger. Which all I need is someone to just validate that they do love me, and I'm fine. So I will say that this cycle of abandonment, heartache, pain, and anger is self-fulfilling. Because of course, if you're angry, nobody wants to be around you, nobody trusts you, and especially if you have, like avoidant people or children or parents even that are in your life and they see your reaction, they're going to be like, not really frightened necessarily, but very troubled or hurt. And so, yeah, you're either going to have two reactions when you've got anger. You're either going to have someone that matches your anger, or they're going to give you the big X. They're going to block you, they're going to ghost you, and they're going to go away. Why? Because they don't know how to cope with your outburst. Especially when I had the brain swelling, as I've said in some of my other videos, I had sort of like borderline personality disorder expressions. It's because my brain was all jumbled. If you want to know more about some of these stories that I'm telling, I suggest that, I'll put a link somewhere here, but I suggest that you go watch my playlist, Getting to Know the Phoenix. I am being very vulnerable here and very open. And one thing that I do is I don't blame anyone else. I mean, in my mind, sometimes I may blame people, but ultimately I come back to me. What could I have done different? And I could have done a ton of things different. And I'm 64 years old and I'm still learning. Okay, the second trigger that I have is when I perceive or that I see someone is making my life harder. This is kind of hard to explain, but I've already had a hard life. So I have worked at times like a man. I have suffered in the heat. I have also been at least coerced into fasting long periods of time. At one point, I fasted 21 days on liquids, and essentially my hair just lost all of its luster. If I tried to wash it, it literally stuck together like glue, and I couldn't separate it or get it dried. And, I have been, I would say, coerced into fasting 3 days, 7 days. Sometimes it was on water, sometimes I was allowed to drink liquids, but, this may inadvertently have something to do with me looking younger than 64 years old. Because fasting is actually very good for you. And, but through a lot of my life, it has been difficult. It's been hard. And I have trouble processing what's the next move, what's the next thing to come that I should be doing, paying attention to detail, prioritizing, remembering things. And especially since I went through the brain thing, I'm still learning to process. And I'm a neurodivergent thinker and ADHD, so it's just thinking is important to me. So if somebody comes along and they're like, what I would quote, doing something stupid, which is a crude way to put it, but they're doing something that's going to cost me financially, that's going to cost me work, that's going to delay progress overall, I can get pretty angry and testy. Now, I'm not excusing this behavior. I want you to know I'm not excusing this behavior, and this is why that I am not going to tolerate it. I am going to go to anger management, and I am going to improve. And it's especially difficult for me to remember back at times when somebody that I know and I love, that is near and dear to me, and I have made their life hard. I have hurt them through my anger. And like I said, I'm being very vulnerable here, but I'm also doing it, not only is this good talk therapy for me, but it's also good talk therapy for other people, because I'm not the only one like this. There are lots of people that deal with anger that stems from childhood trauma, or divorces, or many aspects of life can cause you to have anger. One of the things that I'm going to talk about later is how you can start out as an anxious attachment, and because you're going through all of these things that you don't understand, eventually you become an avoidant and you just cut everybody out of your life. It's kind of like, if they don't want to be in my life, I'm done with them. They don't think I'm worth it. I don't think they're worth it. I'm not doing this anymore. And I am a big proponent of the family unit. I am fiercely loyal to my family, but I pretty much have hurt any and all of them at one time or another. So they may not believe that. But the family unit is one of the most important things that we can have. And understanding, there is such a lack of understanding on how to support each other as a family. Okay, so as I finish up this video, I want to tell you what I have learned about how to deal with anger. One of the worst things that you can do is suppress anger. If you just hold it in, you become an avoidant. You avoid confrontation. You don't want to talk about it. You don't want to face it. There's a lot of estrangement that goes along because of this. There's a lot of blocking. There's a lot of going silent, no contact, which is painful all around. It's painful for you because of your anger. It's painful for people that love you, but it's not a way of resolution. It may be good for a time, but it's not a way of resolution. So suppressing anger can cause huge marital problems, especially if you're not telling your husband or your wife the truth about how you feel. It can cause huge problems in the future of your children. So suppressing anger, also you can hold it in and get ulcers and all kinds of problems with your health. Suppressing anger is not a good thing. But expressing your anger, and a lot of people teaches this is the way to do it. Get a punching bag. If you have a natural anger, and anger is a natural emotion, and you're coping with it appropriately, you can get angry and kind of state your mind and just go on. But if you have got this clinical, deep-seated rage because you've been hurt and you're hurting, expressing anger just makes it get bigger, because you express your anger and then this rage just fires off in your head, and before you know it, your entire body is set on fire with this rage and wrath. And it's not healthy. I have gotten angry before and, get a pain in my neck, and there's like throbbing in my neck, and, my shoulder hurt, I feel like I'm going to have a heart attack. So then I have to calm myself down. And, hand shaking is one thing. You get so angry that your hands start shaking, or black out and do something that, God forbid you would hurt anybody, but you can black out for a period of time where you're just even for just 3 seconds, you don't really remember what happened those 3 seconds. Say, for instance, you're sitting on the couch and somebody makes you super, super angry, and that rage just takes off, and you come off of the couch and you don't even remember later getting up off the couch. So expressing anger when you have deep-seated rage is a bad thing. So you may ask the question, what do we do? if you can't suppress it and you can't express it, what do? You release it. And I have already been practicing this, and I'm going to practice it more as I go into therapy. But to release anger, what you do what I've been doing is I recount something that someone did to me. And some of these things are very valid. I have every right to be angry about something someone said, something someone did, some abuse, some abandonment. There's certain things that happen. I totally have a right to be angry about it. But what I do is I kind of relive some of these things in my mind. And when I feel that anger rise up, then you don't suppress it, you don't express it, you just feel it. And if you really concentrate on it, you'll feel it in your hands, in your arms, in your stomach. You may have sensations go up your neck. There's actually a sensation that goes along with anger. You can feel little fireworks going off sometimes in your arms and your legs. There's certain triggers that go off as you're releasing this anger. But if you're not suppressing or expressing it, it will simply die out like a firecracker. And then you're left with this sense of, I made it. I made it through that. And now I don't feel angry and I feel better. So as we practice this, and as I go on through my anger management, I'm going to share with you. I am much better than I used to be, but I have seen signs that it's not gone at all. And I have so much suppressed that I need to deal with it. And I am sure that there's many of you out there that could start this journey with me. So I am going to say that this video is complete. And I would like to ask you to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell button. And if you feel like it, comment. Tell me some of your feelings. What have you experienced in the way of your own anger? And what have you experienced in the way of other people's anger? Because I have lived with people before that had chronic, extreme, explosive anger. And it's not pleasant. So it can be catching. So I'm going to say goodbye for now, and I'll catch up with you next time.